I'd like to welcome Justin to the show. Hey, Justin, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while. Actually, I've been watching your YouTube channel for quite a bit. And a lot of the people that listen to this podcast know sort of my struggles with my truck and trailer and just the size of it going through neighborhoods in these sort of city small city dense neighborhoods, and that's what got me into looking at alternatives for my business. And I stumbled upon your YouTube channel because one of the things that you use in your business is a Ford Transit van. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I got it in February of 2016. It is the Ford Transit 250. They make a 150, a 250, and a 350, just like the Ford trucks, the F-150, the 250, and the F-350. And it's the medium length and the medium height. Okay. They have shorter ones and ones that don't have a high ceiling.
Yeah.
But I got it. It was a 2015 model. I bought it early 2016 and drove it every day since then. It's been great. I haven't had any issues with it at all.
Oh, that's awesome. So I'm just step back a little bit and just have maybe you introduce yourself before we get ahead of ourselves. I got so excited there with the van. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Okay, well, I'm 37 years old and born and raised in Georgia, just north of Atlanta. My whole family lives here. I've been here my whole life. And I started in lawn care probably like a lot of other people do. When I was in high school, I worked at a dealership because my father's a mechanic.
Okay.
And I was like detailing cars. As they sold a car, they would bring it to us and we would just like take all the stickers off and clean it and then send it up front for the customer that just bought the vehicle. And when I graduated high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And still really don't know what I want to do in life. But I was working at the dealership and I was just making minimum wage. It's just kind of a basic starting job. I was young. And I ended up, over the summer, I moved to the body shop. Okay. And I started buffing all the cars, the paint as they came out of the paint booths. I would fix any imperfections in the paint. And then, they would go on and the customer would pick them up. Well, I think I was making $9 or $10 an hour. This was back in like 2001. And I found out that they were charging like $200 and $300 per car.
Yeah.
And I was doing like 8 or 10 of them a day, as fast as I could, as best as I could. And I kind of started doing the math and I was like, man, like if I work 8 hours, making $9 an hour, by the time taxes are taken out and everything, I'm going to walk away with like $50 or $60 for the day. But that just made them $2,000 or $3,000 for the day. Okay. And at that point I was like, it kind of, I felt like I was worth more than that. Or I could make more money than that. So I used a little push mower that my grandfather gave me, and I started cutting grass in my neighborhood that I grew up in.
Okay.
So, and I'm sure a lot of people start that way. Well, because where I grew up, like all my neighbors, they had been there since I was a little kid, so they all knew me. And it was easy just to kind of get 4 or 5 yards to cut. And I would just charge, $20 or $30. And I felt like that's when my eyes opened to kind of like entrepreneurship. And like, I didn't want to be in that 9 to 5 grind, because I was like, man, I can go cut 5 yards at $30 a yard.
Yeah.
And come home with $150. And I'm like at home at 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock, So that whole summer, I hustled. I had a little Ford Ranger. It was like a 4-cylinder, 5-speed, basic little junky truck. And, my dad had like an Echo blower from like the 70s that just smoked so bad you couldn't even hardly run it. And I just kind of saved up my money. And then like I was 18 or 19. So like at that time you kind of needed to like credit and credit cards or whatever. So I went to my local Exmark dealership and
Mhm.
I financed a 36-inch Exmark walk behind.
Okay.
And then that next spring, I just started really hustling, you know, and picking up as many yards as I could. I knew a lot of people from high school, and I just ended up in all these different little neighborhoods and started building a business that way.
Okay. Very cool. So,
And
yeah, go ahead.
well, no, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, what first attracted you uh, to even think about lawn care as, when you went from that job and looking at doing the math? And I've been there before. I've had jobs. Ironically, at a car dealership, I was driving parts around and I wanted to make
Yeah,
my way into the parts department as one of the parts guys. But I remember getting, it was a full-time job. And up to that point, I was only working part-time jobs. So this was like my
mhm,
first like full-time job. And I thought like, oh, I'm going to be set here with these, this dealership and stuff. And uh, I was making like $7 or $8 or $9 an hour, something very similar. And I remember after taxes, I got my first check and I went to my truck after work and I opened up the envelope with like the little pay stub and I was left with like $500 for 2 weeks. And I was like,
yeah.
are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah, I felt kind of depressed, you know,
yeah.
like after I put in a whole week's worth of work, and like I felt like I pulled my weight on my end, like I showed up on time and I did more than what I was supposed to. And then when I got the check, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is not good. This
No,
is
no.
horrible. And
No.
I thought, I can't do this the rest of my life, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's nothing personal from the dealership I worked at. It's business.
Mhm.
That's my job, is to do this service or
Yep.
whatever and make them money. And I just didn't want to play that game. I wanted to go out and make my own money. I think it's a little bit of a personality thing, lawn care. A little bit maybe obsessive compulsive, or like seeing the before and after.
Mhm.
It was rewarding to me.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, the paint correction in the body shop was rewarding as well. I
Mhm.
just didn't feel like they were paying me what I was worth.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that's how I got started. I mean, it was one of those things to where you already kind of knew how to cut grass from being just a young kid,
Yes.
but not at a professional
Yeah.
level. I didn't know the best way to cut, flower beds and edge around flower beds, or
Mhm.
what all these little things that you learn along the way.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So it was just natural, just something, in the South, like my mom, like she stayed at home, like she never worked. She stayed at home and raised the kids.
Yeah.
And my father worked every day. And she said, your butt's not staying home all summer. You better find something to do,
Mhm.
because like when you're 17, 18 years old, you're kind of considered a young man, at that point. And she said, you better get out and do something. I don't care if it's whatever you do, just do something.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just started cutting grass. That's how I started.
Okay.
Uh,
Awesome.
and I enjoyed the before and after. Okay,
Yes.
because when I first started, you're not getting like these pristine, like high end properties. You're getting more like yards that people want to pay a guy $20 to just kind of knock it down.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
whole property is weeds. There's no grass really there, and they just, hey, can you knock it down for $20? And honestly, those type of properties gave me the biggest reward because I saw the biggest difference.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Nice.
because you go to like $1 million property, they've had lawn maintenance companies on that property every week for 5 years. You're maintaining the perfect look that they already have.
Mhm.
There's not much change. More than, it'd be easier for it to go down and look worse than it is to make it look better,
Yeah.
because they've already been paying someone to keep it perfect.
Mm. Yeah.
But
Very good
these
point.
low end kind of, junky properties, that's where you see a huge change. And the people, the customer, the homeowner is amazed. They come outside and they're like, wow, this looks so much better.
Ver-
And that kind of drives you, to do more. And that's what I wanted. I started just trying to build up a ton of customers.
Mhm. Very cool. So, do you have in your business? Are you a single owner operator, or do you have employees?
No, I own it and operate it myself.
Okay.
Long story short, I started out by myself. I ended up with after like 2008, 9, the kind of the housing crisis here, things started building back up.
Mm-hmm.
And I had at one point, 3 trucks and a couple of guys that worked for me. And that's how, it's kind of like the lead to why I ended up with the transit and back to working for myself.
Okay.
We had a Zuzu box trucks, the cab over
Yep.
truck. Had like a F-250 and an open cab truck. It wasn't a box truck. It just had like the landscape bed on the back.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Mitsubishi Fuso. So like you have the Zuzu and then you have
Yep.
the Mitsubishi, and I think Nissan and a couple other ones make them. Well, what happened was at this point in my career, I had established a bunch of properties, and we had 2 guys, and it was running very good, smooth. It was every week we were getting it done, knocking it out, and the transmission went out on the Isuzu.
Oh.
Okay, well, with my dad being a mechanic, we always grew up working on everything ourselves. I've never put a vehicle in the shop and like had someone repair it for me.
Okay.
Well, when the transmission went out, my dad was like, okay, we'll just pull it out. I'll take it to work because he, he's a mechanic. He works at a dealership. He was like, we'll take it apart. We'll get a rebuild kit and we'll fix it. And, no big deal. Well, once we did that, we found out what actually failed in the transmission was the back of the transmission where the drive shaft comes out. There's a bearing there. It's called the output shaft.
Okay.
And there's a bearing. Okay. The bearing went bad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've called every place across this whole globe. No one you can't buy just a bearing.
Mm.
You have to buy a whole new transmission or
wow.
find a used transmission, right?
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I was kind of through with cab overs.
Okay.
Because once again, I think they're great vehicles. It's just from my perspective and wanting to be able to repair them myself,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't get parts for them.
Yeah.
So after that, I kind of wanted to make some changes in the business.
Okay.
And that's what I did. At this point in my career, I knew a lot more about like routes and route density. And,
Mm-hmm.
I started learning a lot about like how much each property was actually profiting and how much it was costing me to, do it. So I kind of made a big move over the winter, and I just sold both of the cab over trucks. I sold the F-250. I got rid of the employees, and I literally went to the Ford dealership and I picked up the Transit.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, I realized I can make more money doing this by myself and do more smaller, high-end properties.
Yeah.
Okay, we had like Laser Z's, 48s and Exmark Navigators, like for more bigger properties where you would need a couple of people on each job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I got the Ford Transit, I went to just a Exmark 36-inch mower, a 30-inch mower, and a 21, and it fits in the van perfectly.
Okay.
So we're doing these homes that are, $700,000 home, which is a very nice high-end home in this area, but they're only on a quarter of an acre. They're very small lots.
Yeah.
And they're really intricate. They have a lot of curves and beds and, different plantings and stuff. So you can't just put a big 60-inch mower on it and just, mow it down and go. Mm-hmm. These people, the property requires more precision. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's where these smaller mowers come into play.
Yeah.
Well, the van is almost like a small cab over in a way.
Yes.
It's my equipment's out of the weather. Okay, it's locked up from any type of thieves or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I can drive it home at night because in my subdivision where I live, you can't have a commercial vehicle.
Okay.
Okay, so that's why we only have our logo on the truck. I'm not like fully advertising phone numbers, anything like that, because I want to be able to drive it home at night. Mm-hmm. So really, from the outside, it just looks like a standard service truck. People wouldn't probably know, like, oh, there's, lawnmowers and blowers inside. They probably think it's a plumbing contractor or, electrician or something.
Okay.
So it's like a miniature box truck in a way.
Okay.
It gave me all the benefits, but it was a lot easier to work on and find parts for.
Okay. Okay. So just before the break there, we were talking about the transit van, and you said you got the medium length and medium height version of that van, and that you load the three mowers in there, the 36-inch walk behind, and a 30-inch mower and a 21-inch mower. So how are you doing the loading? Do you have like portable ramps, or did you have a custom ramp built, or how does that work?
It's just two portable ramps. They sell them for like ATVs, loading ATVs into the
Okay.
back of a pickup truck or something like that.
Okay, very, very cool. And you can get, so is there a specific way that those three mowers fit in there? Because you said it fits like just perfectly. So
Yeah,
how,
yeah,
so,
yeah.
so what's the process there?
Right. Yeah, the 36-inch when I load it first, and it kind of goes all the way to the front to the left behind like the driver's seat.
Okay,
And then the 30 can fit next to it behind the passenger seat. And then the 21 kind of interlocks behind the 30, that kind of strap those together.
okay,
And then the straps, the ramps go behind the 36-inch mower on the driver.
okay. And do
And
you use like any sort of rack or something? Like what are you doing with your trimmers and blowers and stuff?
I welded a rack
Okay.
on. I made one. It holds the trimmer, the edger, and then I have like an extended hedge trimmer.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Inside those vans, there's a lot of threaded holes.
Yes.
So all I did was find just the right size bolt, and the thread pattern, and I just took some square tubing and just made a simple rack to hold those things to, and just bolted in.
Okay, very, very cool. So, have you tried? Because I noticed you talked about the Navigator. Do you still have the Navigator? And do you ever have to try to load
I
that in the
actually
van,
sold,
or do you do something different with that?
sold the Navigator.
Oh, okay.
Um, Now it would fit, but what I would do is you would need a custom ramp
Yeah.
because the Navigator has that third wheel on the back.
Yes.
So you need a flat platform. The two ramps that I use now, it wouldn't work. So,
Okay.
but they're starting to catch on. I've seen a lot of more like companies that are making like wheelchair and handicap access
Yes.
vehicles, and they're coming out with ramps and stuff that fold up.
Yeah.
And I think you could, if you wanted to, you could buy one of those, or you could probably make one pretty easily.
Yeah, very, very cool. I was, like I said, in my own research, trying to, think of things to do in the future to kind of, because it just gets worse and worse. There was like literally one day where I went to go do this 35 or $40 mow in this neighborhood, and I couldn't find parking. So I went to the next house and then did that one, and then came back to do that one again, and there was still no parking. And this repeated 5 times throughout the day. By
Yeah.
the time I finally got it done, it was like 4:30 in the afternoon when I had first done my first visit there, like 9:30 in the morning, going back and forth. And I was like, this is crazy. I've made no money here. Like I can't find any parking for this truck
Oh,
and trailer. It's like ridiculous.
and yeah, and let me make a couple of points here. With that seat, that over that winter, it slows down a little bit here in Georgia. I mean, we still mow, but like only go to the properties like once or twice a month. It's not
Hmm.
weekly mows throughout the winter. So in that downtime, when I was selling off trucks and deciding on what to do, me and my wife, we sat down and we just started writing out all the pros and cons from where I was at with the cab overs to what I was trying to do with the transit.
Okay.
And one thing you mentioned about like, no parking, obviously the transit solves that because it's when you compare it to a truck and a trailer, its wheelbase is very short compared to
Yes.
that. Even with the Isuzu cab overs, I had a 16-foot box and a 4-foot dovetail on the back. So overall, this vehicle is like over 30 something feet long.
Hmm.
Um, we started doing all these comparisons, and one of the biggest improvements was not only just because it was a shorter wheelbase and I can get in and out of these tight subdivisions, but the gas mileage is way better.
Hmm.
Okay, it's got the EcoBoost engine, which is a V6 twin turbo engine that Ford puts in the F-150s. And if you don't have a heavy foot, it gets really good gas mileage.
Okay.
I'm thinking 16 to 18 miles per gallon. And also, the Isuzu was so slow. It's just a diesel. It's big. It's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
We had to wait for traffic a lot of times. You can't just kind of pull out in front of cars and just get up to speed really quickly.
Yeah.
You have to wait for the break in traffic that was big enough for you to pull out and start building up speed.
Mm.
Well, my wife was like, "Man, you're probably saving like 5 or 8 minutes between each property by going to the transit because you're not having to wait for that break in traffic to
Mm.
get the truck out."
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this business is all about like timing, right? So
Yes.
I thought, man, out of 10 properties a day, if it's taking me an extra 8 minutes to get to each property, that's 80 minutes of travel time. That's you're saving a ton of money by being able to have this lighter, shorter vehicle just kind of get out and get going with the flow of traffic quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I noticed too, like when that example that I gave with that particular one incident that I had, and there's been many, but those neighborhoods that I was servicing, they all had front driveways, and they were all empty. I could have parked in the driveway, but it would only fit my truck, and then the trailer
Right.
would be across the sidewalk and sticking out into the road. And the amount, like, I kid you not, the amount of parking enforcement that's driving it's it's like they're sharks going around. Like any little infractions, like they almost wait for you. Like you go to the backyard to mow a lawn, you come back, there's a ticket on you. And it's like, you're not going to make any money
Exactly.
like that, right? So it was like, I would never park on the driveways because I knew I would get a ticket right away. But I was like, with a van, I'd be able to park in the driveway and I wouldn't have to worry about anything else, and not blocking the sidewalk and all that sort of stuff, because it would fit perfectly there. So yeah,
Exactly.
it's really neat to see, because it was always something that I thought originally, like I thought about the transit van, um, but having somebody like you who's making videos about it on YouTube was really just justifying that thought that yes, this is possible, that you can run
Right.
your lawn care business. A question though that I have is, and it's one that every time I've talked about or I've posted pictures about on Instagram of a transit van, and I've done mock-ups of a transit van with my company logos on it and stuff, and people always ask, I'd be worried about the fuel smell. What do you do with the fuel smell, in the back of the truck and stuff like that? So how do you handle that? Do you get, because you're obviously you talk about the southern states, so there's going to be a lot of evaporation and stuff like that happening. So how do you, is that an issue, the fuel
Well,
smell?
I mean,
And
I think it's a very legitimate question or concern, and I had the same worries, but it has a partition behind the driver and passenger
yeah.
seat. Okay, so that's blocking off like 90% of the back from the front.
Hmm.
Also, I don't know if every manufacturer does this. I assume they probably would, but on X marks, they're for the vent for the fuel tank. It runs through a carbon canister.
Okay.
So we don't smell any fuel. I mean, in the
Okay.
middle of the summer, it's hot. All the gas tanks are like, really like swelled up from
Yes. Yes.
pressure building and all that. You may get a little bit, but the true test is my wife, whenever she gets in it, we'll take this van and go get groceries.
Oh, okay.
I've always asked her, I'm like, hey, do you smell gas in here or whatever? Because I was scared that I was just kind of used to it.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah, and she's driving like a brand new vehicle to work all week long, and she'll get in my van. She's never said there's any issue with it.
Oh, wow.
So I think between the partition and then the filters on the actual vents on the gas tanks on the mowers, I don't have an issue with it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, very cool. The
Uh,
wife test
also,
always is the is the key there.
definitely.
You wouldn't even have to ask her. She would let you know before.
Oh, for sure. And
Yeah.
look, hey, we take this van, we'll go out to eat on Friday nights with it and then stop by the grocery store because it's just like a big enclosed trailer basically with four tires, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
If you wanted to buy a piece of furniture and it was raining, you can go to the furniture place and just
Hmm.
put it in the back and take it home.
Yeah, yeah.
So these vans are so useful.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Ford's had them in Europe for 25 years. They
Yes.
just started bringing them over back to the States in 2015.
Okay. Very cool.
So, and everybody in Europe uses this type of van.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
they're super popular in
it
Europe. They're
definitely, yes.
they're everywhere. Um, what about like? Because I would think, just off the top of my head and thinking, in my own sort of lists of pros and cons of using a van. One of the things that I thought of was, um, if I had to go to the bathroom, like,
Yeah,
you could
exactly.
you could go in a bottle or something if you had to in the back and close the doors and nobody sees you, instead of
Definitely.
having to, get in the vehicle halfway through if it was like an emergency and have to go to a gas station or something like that.
Definitely, yes. And these trucks, keep in mind, if you were to go to the dealership and spec one yourself and build it, there's so many options. I mean, like the sliding side door.
Hmm.
Some people get windows.
Yes.
Well, mine's solid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want as least windows as possible for
Hmm.
one, so people can't see in there.
Yep.
But two, if I didn't strap a mower down and it rolled or something, it'd bust the, window out or
Yes.
whatever. So, yeah, if you spec it to where there's no windows, then yeah, you definitely have privacy in the back for whatever situation you need.
Hmm. Yeah, the options that are available with those vans is crazy, and it's only getting crazier. I noticed that Ford released now an all-wheel drive version for
Yes,
2020, and
yes,
also a crew cab version where they have that partition behind the sliding door. So the
yes,
sliding door opens, and it's a row of seats with windows, so you could have
exactly.
a couple of workers and stuff in the back, and then that partition's behind that, and then you open the back doors, and you've got that smaller
Yes,
cabin there, but the enclosed part. So it's insane what you can spec out those vans to do for your business, like almost perfect. But I'm like you, I would get one with no windows, just solid the metal solid doors and stuff, and go from there. I don't know if you can get sliding door just on the passenger side, because that's probably what I would want, is just uh,
yeah, that's what I have.
yeah, just
Uh,
one door.
I'm not sure. They may have sliding doors on both sides to where you can open up two doors and it'd be like, all the way through. I don't know. Um, I do know one thing I've noticed since driving this every day for all these, 5 or 6 years now. The medium height will fit through a drive-through. If
Okay.
you were to go to the highest one,
Yeah.
I think FedEx and some of these delivery, Amazon has them now. I don't know if they would fit through the drive-through because a lot of times it's like an 8 foot six
Okay.
inch clearance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So keep that in mind. I'm 6 foot tall and
Yep.
I can stand up straight in the back of mine.
Okay.
Now
Yep.
I do have to duck a little bit because there's some support ribs in the roof,
Yes. Yep.
but I kind of you just kind of get used to it. You just hunch over a little bit, grab your equipment, and get out of there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
the high roof would be awesome, but then I would lose the ability to go through a drive-through with
Yeah.
it.
That's very important.
Yes. Now I would consider getting the longest version. I think
Okay.
the wheelbase on mine is 148 inches. I don't know what the shortest one is, and I don't know what the longest one is, but I do know mine's the middle. I would be okay with the longest one.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be very cool too. Is depending on, I guess the parking situations, how, because obviously then you give up that too, as well. But yeah, it's very cool. And like you said, the drive-throughs is something to keep in mind. There, I know for me that's important.
Yep.
Sometimes how you have an issue sometimes when you go through the same drive-through all the time, and they start to say things like, the sauce is in the bag before you even ask for it.
Right.
They get to
Yep.
know you. It's like,
Exactly. Yep.
oh, it's like, okay, I think I've been here too often.
Yep.
Um, yeah, that's awesome. Awesome insight. Are there any, now that you've used it for these few years, anything negative that you can say about going to a van?
Um, okay, so it's only going to fit certain landscape business models.
Yeah.
You're not going to be a huge install company with this van. You're not going to be doing acres and acres of grass, like, for instance, maybe out up north or out west, there's properties that are 2 and 3 acres,
Hmm.
more kind of pasture country setting.
Yep.
I mean, you're going to have limitations, right? Because I can't put a 72-inch wide mower in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't put a 20-foot tree in the back of it and go install it somewhere. But there's workarounds with everything. A lot of people through my YouTube channel have asked me like, oh, what do you do about debris, or if you had
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
bag a bunch of lawns. Well, I do the same thing I did with the cab overs, man. When we had the Navigator and we were mowing a ton of properties,
Mm-hmm.
we'd back that Navigator up in the back of that box truck and just dump the clippings out
Mm.
and then just drive the mower on top of them. At the end of the day, pull all the equipment off and rake all the clippings out.
Mm.
And there's been times where I've been pruning crepe myrtles down here and I'll just fill the back of that van just slap full of just branches.
Oh, wow.
So, you just make it
Yeah, you
work.
do. Yeah, you do what
Yeah.
you got to do to get it done.
So that's the negatives, I guess, would be you're not going to be running some huge install or huge, company that's going to be mowing acres of grass.
Mhm.
This is for smaller mowers in a city, suburban type area.
Yeah, absolutely. You're a big Xmark guy as well. You've got the Xmark. Is it a turf tracer that you're using for that 36?
Yes, sir. Turf
Yeah,
tracer.
yeah. And then I'm assuming the 30-inch is an Xmark commercial 30.
Yes.
Okay. And then do you round it out with a 21? Is that the Xmark commercial 21 as well?
It is.
Oh,
Yeah.
there.
From the get-go, ever since back when I was Tony, when I first started, I took out a loan for an Xmark. That's all I've ever owned.
Okay. Very, very cool.
Uh,
So,
I,
so yeah, go ahead.
and it's not that they've been very good to me. Uh,
Yes.
what my advantage to Xmark for me was all the dealers around here carried parts for them, and they
Okay.
carried them. It's like a big dealer in my
Yeah.
area. And once again, since I'm repairing and fixing all my stuff, I just need a place to get parts like quickly.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's the thing. I think anything mechanical is bound to break at some point, especially, with the wear and tear that we put on these machines. But if I could just run up the street real quick and get a part,
Yeah.
fix it, and then get back to mowing, that works for me.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they've always been good to me like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually talking to my dealer about this last week. I dropped off my Xmark Staris to do. There was a couple of recalls on it, and I was asking him about uh, other brands and stuff that they have, coming in and stuff. And he was talking about a particular brand that was trying to went in for a meeting and they wanted to set up. And he says, it's a great brand. They have great stuff, but the problem is that for here where we are on the west coast of Canada and stuff like that, if that mower goes down, he says to get parts and stuff, it was going to be like 2 or 3 weeks because they don't have any local distribution. And he says that's unacceptable. He says with the Toro and Xmark, we can get the stuff like same day.
Exactly.
and then have our you landscapers out back on the road as quick as possible, doing what you need to do. So that dealer support and finding and it's not necessarily the brand. Like Xmark may be not the right fit for somebody if that dealer doesn't carry it and doesn't have the parts and doesn't have. You got to look at that whole rounded picture.
I think it would be very smart. I see so many people online in these lawn care forums and business forums, and they're just all about Echo, or they're all about Steel, or they're all about Hustler mowers. And from a business standpoint, I think it's very silly to be that way. I would look at the largest, most profitable and productive landscape companies in your area and what equipment they use, because they're the ones who spend in the big dollars at these dealerships. Those dealerships are going to stock parts for them. Okay. So if they're running Xmark or Echo, then that's what I would run, because clearly them dealers are going to support those big companies. They're going to keep parts on hand for them. It would be silly to run as something totally different and be waiting 3 weeks for a part,
It makes no sense.
Time is money in this business.
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked about that on the podcast in the past in trying to tell people that are just starting out, why you want commercial equipment, if you can afford it. And I've given, examples, and I haven't always used commercial equipment. There's been cases where, I haven't used commercial equipment because there wasn't enough properties to justify that particular piece of equipment. So I would get the residential version of it first to start out. But you risk that, if it goes down, that you're out. And I've given examples where with a commercial mower, something went wrong on a property, and I drove to the dealer and was back within a half an hour with the part, back on the mower and back finishing that lawn, because they stock the part for that. They know those are common things that are going to go wrong with that commercial mower. Had that been the residential version of that mower, good luck. It would have been, probably a week or two to get parts, not being a commercial version. So let's transition here, seeing as we're speaking about equipment, and you on YouTube are known as the Southern Reel Mower. So you're using a actual reel mower for some of your jobs, I take it. So tell us a bit about that.
Okay, so I honestly, I don't remember how I got started real mowing. I do remember when I lived at home with my family. I was 18 or 19, and I was starting this lawn care business. I came across a True Cut reel mower, which is more of a kind of the top of the line residential mower.
Okay.
And my parents, we have Bermuda in the South mainly, and um, there was a country club or something I was cutting grass in, and I saw that some of these properties were, I mean, just absolutely perfect, beautiful, super low cut grass. And I started paying attention, and I noticed they were using this cylindrical type mower.
Hmm.
This is when I first found out about real mowing, you know.
Okay.
Well, in these golf course like country club subdivisions, all these homeowners are cutting with reels because, I mean, the golf course is cut with reels as well,
Yes.
and they want their grass to look like the golf course.
Hmm.
And I was so intrigued by it because it was so precise and smooth and flat, you know. And I started doing a little bit of research, and I came across, like I said, a True Cut reel mower is the brand, and it's a high-end residential mower. And I found one used at the time on like Craigslist,
Okay.
and I bought it, and I just kind of tinkered around with it at my parents' house, and that kind of got me started with the real mowing.
Okay.
Um, Now it is a niche market
Yes.
because with real mowing, you're mowing 2 and 3 times a week. It's got to be just perfectly, tabletop smooth, and there's so many other things that come along with real mowing.
Okay.
Uh, but yeah, that's kind of how I got started. I was just intrigued by how nice of a cut it left.
Okay. So what would you say are uh, the advantages of using a reel mower over a rotary mower? And you've hinted, obviously, that, and I'll segue this into the next question because you can kind of answer it all together. So, what are the advantages, and when and why would you use the reel mower?
Well, the advantages, first off, is going to be the health of the turf. Real mowing is a scissor action, whereas
Okay.
rotary mowing is a ripping action.
Okay.
Okay, so anytime you have a scissor cut, if you look at the leaf blade, the blade of grass, it
Yeah.
is cut perfectly like a pair of scissors.
Okay.
We cut a piece of paper. And rotary mowing, it's ripping it, so it puts the turf in a lot of stress, because it's just the same with humans. Like if you were to get cut with a razor blade or a chainsaw,
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
of a surgical type cut with the razor blade would heal so much faster and cleaner
Yeah.
than a cut with like a chainsaw, where it's just really ravaging the skin,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's the same concept with turf. I mean, it keeps it healthier because of how clean cut it is.
Okay. Um, so, is there a particular um, type of customer that you do the reel mowing for
Well, yeah,
versus the others?
this is not the average Joe will never pay for this service.
Okay.
It's a costly service. You're there multiple times a week. So when I was in the country clubs mowing grass, those are the type of customers that would want that or justify that service.
Okay.
There's a lot of prep that goes into the property before you can even put a real mower on it. You can't have irrigation heads sticking up. You can't have, a bunch of dips and hills, and, all, it's got to be smooth, so it takes someone, first of all, to prep the property. You have to usually come in with a walker or a navigator type mower, a bagging mower, and just cut it to the ground and get all the clippings up. And then you do some top dressing and sanding, and you start building the level surface
Yeah.
before you even put a real mower on
Hmm.
it. So this is a very high-end service, and we were just doing it for a few select customers in like country club type
Okay.
settings.
Okay. Yeah, that would probably never fly here on the west coast of Canada because of the amount of it's like where I live is like think Seattle. It's like the
Right.
same
Okay.
rain pattern. It's like
Yep.
rain, rain, rain. So the soil compaction, the dips and things that you talk about is
Right.
like
Right. Right.
every lawn is lumpy and bumpy, and people don't put generally don't put a lot of money into top dressing and things like that. They just the most people like they want it to look nice, and you can get it to look really nice with a regular, rotary mower and decent without having all of the extra expense and stuff. But I could see how, just looking at some of your videos, how just amazing, like it's so smooth and flat. It's like
Uh,
a putting green, basically.
Basically a putting green, yeah. I mean, technically, it's even mine cut at a quarter inch would be considered tall for a putting green because they're getting down to, 0.125 of an
Oh,
inch or even less. These machines go super low.
mhm.
Um, I don't have, I mean, it would be a full time job. You would literally be just working all day long at your house, trying to maintain it
Yeah, yeah.
that low. So I start off like at a quarter inch in the spring, and you're at a half inch, by the end of summer. But
Okay,
you can do that with these warm season grasses, and we have a very long growing season here.
okay.
I don't know how it is or what type of grasses you guys mow out west or up north, but you're not going to be cutting fescue at half an inch or a
Yeah,
quarter
yeah,
of an inch.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, and maybe that plays a role with the service down here and the demand for it is because we have warm season grass.
Yes, yes.
Someone who has a fescue lawn, that why would they want a real mower?
Yeah, yeah. I've seen, I have seen real mowers obviously on golf courses here,
Right.
and I've seen a few houses where it's the homeowner that's doing it, and will have a real mower. But literally, like, I'm mowing lawns in the neighborhood, and every day I'm driving past this house, and it's like he's cutting the lawn again. It's like every day
Yeah.
he's cutting the lawn, right? And it looks amazing, but it's like that's a lot of work, right? Like I don't see.
Yeah, you gotta be committed to it. It's something I enjoy. We don't service any more properties like from the business. It's for
Oh,
real
okay,
mowing. When I started the Southern Reel Mower for YouTube, that's what you see as my property,
okay,
and it's almost just like a hobby. Some
okay,
people
yeah,
like to paint pictures or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
I like to kind of tinker with the grass,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the machines and the chemicals, and there's so many things that you have to do once you get into real mowing.
Okay. One thing I have noticed, though, when I've gone on vacation, say to with a family to California, Disneyland, or something like that, that's where I've seen mowing companies with real mowers out there
Right.
more often is in those sort of situations. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And they'll have the real mower with like this. It looked like a front mounted basket or something, and the
Yeah.
clippings were like going into this
Yes.
basket and stuff. But I saw it more often out there in California, around San Francisco, things like that, cruising around there. That I noticed it quite often. But yeah, over here I was like, oh yeah, I don't think that would fly. But I've thought about the same thing as you, like doing it for my own lawn, because it's
Right.
like I could do your thing, but it's like, oh, that's a lot of, like you said, a lot of investment in time,
Oh
to
yeah.
maintain it and doing it. And I don't
Yeah,
think.
keep in mind, like these real mowers are a totally different beast. Like
Yes.
if you don't know how to sharpen them, you got to take them somewhere
Hmm.
to get them sharpened. They're heavy. A walk behind real mower is 300 pounds.
Yeah, yeah,
They're super heavy. They're super precise. You're not going to be mowing sticks. A stick or a little rock can ding the reel on these.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And
So yeah, it's a huge commitment to start reel mowing.
how
But
often would you have to sharpen those blades?
obviously, it depends on if you're doing a lot of top dressing and you have a lot of sand, which is really abrasive. Um, a lot of mowing, but usually once a season, twice a
Okay,
season, you can backlap them.
okay,
So a backlapping would be like a slight sharpening,
okay,
whereas actually taking the reel somewhere and grinding it would be like kind of the same as how we sharpen blades on a rotary mower. You're
okay.
actually removing a lot of metal.
Yes,
But
yes.
I do the backlapping myself, and that just kind of touches the blades up throughout the season. But yeah, once a year, usually I'll just run it down to my local golf course,
Okay,
and the mechanic there will sharpen it for me.
okay. Very, very cool. Is it
Uh,
costly to do that versus
Um,
regular blade
I'm
sharpening?
Yeah, I mean, it's $100,
Okay.
$125.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to depend on if you know the guy and you're friends with him, or
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
kind of shape it's in. If you're hitting a bunch of rocks and stuff, it's going to take a lot of time and to grind that down to a smooth surface again.
Okay.
But yes, it would
So
be considered a costly service to get one sharpened.
okay. So would you do you think there's situations where you could do that as like your main niche business, like doing all real mowing, or is that something that just would be um
I no, I think it would be a business like a nightmare.
okay.
Because you would have to be on these properties so often, and then like in Georgia you may get a week of just afternoon thunderstorms.
Hmm.
Well, I'm supposed to be on each property 3 times a week,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, and I have 20 property. I think it would just kind of blow up in your face.
Oh,
i
okay.
don't i don't know if you could do like a business model that would work.
Okay.
I'm sure there's people that do, and maybe I just haven't thought about it enough. But I think it would be a hard time finding customer base as well, because this is kind of the cream of the crop, the top of the line, the most expensive
Yeah, yeah.
service.
Yeah, almost in like a live-in gardener type, in an estate sort of
Yeah,
sense,
yes.
right? Where you could
I think
dedicate.
exactly. I think you would have to almost like live on the property and just get up and start mowing every single day.
Yeah, yeah, make it.
It's a lot of work, a lot of
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
of.
Yeah, so very, very cool to inform us on that, and to educate us on that part. I have no clue. It just looked like a cool thing to do. But after hearing you, I'm like, yeah, maybe not.
Yeah,
But
no,
because
and that's the kind of a lot of the whole YouTube channel is it's mainly real mowing. I have shown my van on there, and some different landscape things, which I want to do more of, coming up in the future. But the real mowing is just kind of people are interested in it. It
yeah,
looks cool and it's different. Like
yes.
when I'm outside at my house, so we live in a big subdivision, and everyone that walks by, they're like, hey, can I touch your grass? Or how do you get it like that? Or, they're intrigued and they're interested and they're always asking questions and commenting on it. So the YouTube channel mainly just shows kind of the life of a, real mowing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very, very
People like
cool.
it.
Yeah, very cool. So going back to your lawn care business, using the rotary mowers, the next question is one that I really like asking people, entrepreneurs, most importantly, because when I ask a person who has a 9 to 5 job, I tend to get the same answer. But when I ask an entrepreneur, the answers are always different. So that is, how would you, Justin, define success?
Um, no, that's a very good question. It's a in-depth question, but to quickly answer that, success to me would be security, buying yourself, security as far as paying your bills, or uh, I don't think success for me is really a material thing, like as
Hmm.
far as a big house and fast cars and boats and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I think success to me is waking up and being able to do what you want.
Hmm.
Okay, you have time to go real mowing your front yard, or you have time to you know tend to your garden, or go take photographs. That's success to me, that you're no longer in that grind, a nine to
Hmm.
five grind to pay the bills.
Yes, that's a
uh,
great answer.
I think that would be I could go way more in depth,
Yeah,
but I think, yeah, that would be my answer. Success would be, I have time to actually, if I want to wake up at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, I
yeah,
can.
yeah. That's a great answer. That's it actually goes back to one of the first things that you talked about at the start of the podcast, when we talked about you working at that dealership, and getting your first paycheck, and you look at it and you kind of hit that depression, and you kind of do the math, and you
Yeah,
said something. You said, I could be mowing some lawns and be done by 2, and me and that's where that sort of comes in. It's that freedom, that to
there you
do
go.
what
Yeah,
you want when you want. um
yes, that's a good. The freedom was the word maybe I was looking for.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
it buys you freedom.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Very, very
This life,
cool.
I mean, this life, there's so much more to life than just working and going home and giving your money away to the, cable company or gas company. I wanted to be able to do what I want to do. If I want to go fishing on Monday,
Hmm.
I will,
Yeah, yeah.
type thing. That would be success.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Very, very cool. I love like-minded people,
Yes.
just like me. What size properties do you maintain, and for your lawn care business, to give people sort of an idea of what you're doing?
Okay. So, I measure most of all of our properties because we've recently gotten into the chemical treatment side of the business. So all of that's priced by square footage. So I have a pretty good idea of how much square footage these properties have. And my target customer is between 4,000 and like 7,500 square feet.
Okay.
Um, Total property would be quarter acre, half acre.
Okay.
But depending on the size of the home, if
Yeah.
you have a 5,000 square foot home on that, then there's not much grass, left after they
Yes.
build the home on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
these are smaller properties. They're somewhat close together.
Okay.
And it's just how my area where I live is set up. For instance, the neighborhood I live in has over 1,000 homes in it.
Oh well.
So yeah, 1,000 homes. So you could go in, and if you got 2 or 3 or 4 homes on one street, man, you're right there. Like you don't even have to move the truck.
Yeah. Very cool.
So yeah, so we're servicing these small homes, and they're just fast and right there. Not much travel time.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Similar to me, mine are actually probably even smaller than that. I think mine range from about okay. My smallest ones are about 4,000 square feet, and that's the whole property,
Okay.
including the house. So
Yes.
you're
Yeah.
talking, I pull up in this neighbor, and those are the ones I generally have a lot of hard time with truck and trailer parking, because there's
Sure.
so many
Yeah.
houses. They're so tiny. If I park my truck in front, I can literally take up two properties with my truck. I call them postage stamp homes because they're so
Yeah.
small, and I can mow them in 5 minutes, like be done in and out. But then the
What
average is about 8,000 square feet that I'm doing, including the house. So
man,
you're,
you would really benefit from like a Exmark 30 or 36, or yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it would almost be disproportionate to put like a huge rider on that property. It would
yeah,
almost silly because you wouldn't even get like two passes out of it, and it's already mowed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I've got a 36-inch turf tracer as well,
Yes. Perfect.
that I use for some of the larger ones. But people look at it and they're like, "What are you doing with that monstrosity on my
Right.
property?" Like like we don't have big zero turns and things here,
Yeah.
at least in the density, right? So it's like people look at that stuff and they're like, What is that? What are you doing with that?"
Right, exactly. And
Yeah,
and that's the thing is, it's interesting because I've never been to the West Coast or even up north, kind of where
yeah,
you're at. But once again, like I would just tell people, like from everything I've read online, when I first started posting pictures about the Ford Transit, and like, maybe it sparked some interest in other people and it would help them out. I got a lot of negative feedback. People are like, "Oh, this is ridiculous. You can't mow any grass with that thing. You can't fit any mow." And I'm like, "Man, look, let me explain something. Open your mind. There's areas of this country, just like where you live,
yeah.
that you could make a good business out of mowing these small
Oh
properties.
yeah,
I don't need a 72-inch mower. It
yeah,
would be
yeah.
they wouldn't want me on their property."
Yeah, yeah. I think
So
it's actually from my just over the years listening to people talking, I'm going to age myself. Going back to like using forums and things like that. When I first started like 15 years ago and things like that, and people always asking about pricing. What should I price this at? What should I price this at? I found that the smaller properties were way more profitable,
exactly,
and
exactly.
not only from what I could charge somebody to mow that property, because like my average price for a mow is like $50,
Right.
and and it's like a small, you're talking like 7,000 square foot property, but that's including the house and the driveway, and so the actual lawn is not that much. And then I would look at people asking, charging like 100 and change for an acre property. I'm like, that's for like an acre of lawn, and I'm charging half of that for this tiny little thing. And the investment in this equipment is way less than what you're having to pay,
Way
eight,
less.
$10,000 for these mowers that you're using on that.
And keep in mind too, like for instance, I'm a big advocate for the Exmark 30. I've seen a lot of people have negative views of it online or whatever, but I'm here to tell you, man, like that machine is perfect because for one, it's a very simple machine to operate
Hmm.
and it's cheap to maintain. You don't have like go replace a hydraulic pump or a wheel motor on a big rider. I mean, they're so expensive. This X Mark 30 is just it's basic machine and it's easy to repair. It sips fuel. It doesn't use much fuel. It's lightweight, you know, as far as compared to like a big Laser Z or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
So even if we had a downpour, I can still be out mowing the next morning
Hmm.
because the footprint is not heavy on the property.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas when I had the big Navigator, like a Navigator's heavy.
Yes.
And when the hopper's full, it's even heavier.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And there's, man, you have to wait 2 days down here for it to dry out before you can put the Navigator on a property.
Yeah.
So I stay on schedule better, regardless of the weather,
Yeah.
because of these smaller machines.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. Here on the West Coast, like I said, I'm, exactly. I'm only 2 hours away from Seattle,
Okay.
so it's that same weather. And I always laugh with watching on social media and stuff. People saying, we'll be in the shop today. It's a rain day and stuff. And I'm like, there is no rain days here. Every day is a rain day. You have to work in the
Oh,
rain,
yeah,
otherwise you don't have a business.
you don't have a job. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had when I first started, I bought into a franchise lawn care business for the first few years, and they were based out of Australia, but had franchises in multiple countries. And in Australia, like using a walker mower was like the thing.
Yeah.
So when I first started and I was green and stuff, I thought, okay, well, this is. I tried some cheaper alternatives, and once I started getting some a little, a few bigger properties and stuff, and I thought, okay, a walker, like I got to get a walker, and I got one, and it was back in 2007. I bought it, and it was just under $15,000 at the time, and it was fantastic. Left a great cut, but I could barely ever use it because one, it was way too big for some of the properties. It was only a 42-inch deck that I got,
That's what my,
um, but but then the weight, because it rains here so often, it was like I would put it on a lawn and it would just get, with that low ground clearance of having the blower and all that stuff underneath, if it sunk like an inch, it would be stuck.
right, right.
And then it would completely rut because you're trying to get it unstuck. And the
Yes.
amount of times that that would happen, and it just led me to having to sell it eventually. After 4 years, I had it, and I think I had 200 hours on it only
Oh,
after
wow.
4 hours,
Yeah.
because it spent 90. And I came to the realization one day going, that machine cost me, $14,000, and it sits on my trailer 90% of the time. And
Right.
and at the time I was using a Honda 21-inch mower, and I was like, this one cost me $1,000, and it's being used 90% of the time, making 90% of my income. Right? So something's not right here. Something's gotta.
And
uh,
also, keep in mind too, like, for instance, the 30-inch Exmark, it's basically just a large push mower. There's hardly any learning curve to that if you had employees.
yeah.
Uh, it's, they probably have already mowed a lawn with a push mower growing up. So they already
Yeah.
kind of know how to handle it. The walkers and navigators, like, it's a learning curve to that,
Yeah.
and it's a pretty complex machine.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I rode one for years and I loved them. They're great at what they do. But if I was to try to build like some big landscape company, the 30 would be, way less learning curve, as
Yeah,
far
yeah, yeah,
as
absolutely. Even the turf tracer. When I first bought
very
the turf
simple. Yeah.
tracer, and it's funny because now with working with Xmark and things like that, and talking to them and their engineers and stuff, I talk to them and I'm like, you know, um, with the Xmark turf tracer, when I first got it, I said I hated that thing.
Yeah.
I said that has to be the mower that had the biggest learning curve for me. It took me forever, almost probably an entire season, until I was comfortable and didn't make a mistake anymore. Throughout that
Yeah.
first year, I would think I was comfortable, and then all of a sudden, something would happen, or I'd hit the control wrong or something. And then, you could almost go into a parked car because
Yeah.
you panic,
That's
right? You could let
right.
go, but you tend to not let go. You always panic,
Yes.
right? And you're trying to
Yes.
control the thing. Right? And
It's so funny. Yeah.
and
And
now it's like I can fly on it, and there's like no
yeah,
issues with it. I can do slopes and
it's
hills with it. There's no
it's like
issues. But
an extension of my body now.
yeah, it's
Like,
it's
I've
it's probably
noticed
one of my favorite mowers now.
it is.
Um,
I love them. But you're right. It's like human nature. You want to keep holding on to it when if you would just retrain your brain, simply let go, it'll
yeah,
stop.
yeah,
In the panic of the situation, you try to, yeah, you mess up.
yeah. You're going
So,
around in circles, and
exactly. Yes.
all the people walking on the street are like looking at you like, what the heck's going on?
Yeah.
What the heck's going on with that guy? Yeah, very, very cool. So you're doing, I'm assuming, and by the sounds of it, all residential properties, or do you do commercial as well?
No, it's all residential. When we had the box trucks and employees, we were doing commercial properties. I found myself working 7 days a week because we would try to wait for the parking lots to be empty and, go in, and it's kind of hard to blow a bunch of leaves across a parking lot when you have a parking lot full of cars.
Yes.
Uh, and people get upset. You get like a brand new black Mercedes that just got out of the car wash, and it's got grass clippings all over it.
Hmm.
So we ended up just doing like commercials on Sundays and stuff. And kind of back to the whole success thing and all of that we already spoke about. I got tired of working on Sunday. I
Yeah.
didn't want to work on Sundays.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
and every year those places come up for bid to rebid them out, and we would lose them from time to time, and it was kind of an uneasy feeling. You didn't really know if you're going to keep it long term or not. And residential for me seems like people are a little bit more. They buy into you, and they get to know you, and they seem like they keep you around more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The relationship really
Right?
can give you some security in some sense, right?
Yeah, a
There's
little
customers there
bit.
that
Yeah,
value that over the next person that comes along offering a cheaper price and stuff, and
exactly.
you can, yeah.
I've seen a lot of my customers. I've mowed some customers for 15 plus years, and I've seen their kids grow up, and they're
Hmm.
in college now and driving cars, and you become a friend almost of the family. When they go on vacation, they're like, hey, keep an eye on the house for us,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever, because, you are a stranger essentially just getting access to customers' property and going
Yes,
into their backyard and, whatever. So there's a trust there. And
yes.
I feel like people who trust you tend to not get rid of you.
Yeah,
So as long as you hold up your end of the deal and you're doing an excellent job, you're doing it at a good price, and you're doing what you say you're going to do, I felt that it's more reliable on the residential side.
okay. Yeah, very good point. And that's been my experience as well. That's why I enjoy that. I've talked about on the podcast how, in the past doing some commercial stuff, and it didn't matter how good of a job I did. There's literally properties where they would compliment me on how nice the property looks since I took over. And I would spend the entire day on these places. And then when next year would come around, I'd be like, I didn't really actually make any money on that because I spent so much time. And I raised the price by $200 a month, and they're like, yeah, sorry, that's not in the budget. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, you
Mm,
were complaining about the other guys not doing anything, and
right,
I've completely turned the place around, and you can't find another $200 a month, like,
right.
to,
Yeah,
to throw me a
no,
bone.
exactly.
But with residential, it's always been very positive, those relationships that you build. And, it's just, for me, I've enjoyed it a lot better as well. So what are your future plans or goals for your business?
Well, a couple of years ago, I got my chemical applicator's license.
Okay.
So we're starting the chemicals. It was, I think eventually I want to be 100% out of lawn maintenance.
Okay.
I want to be into the chemical side of it. Uh, for no other reason, maybe if I'm just kind of burnt out on lawn care. I've done it for 20 years, and I
Okay.
wanted something new to learn and
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
perfect. So I went and got my license, and I'm enjoying learning about that, and learning the tricks of that trade. But I don't know. We'll see. Right now, that's my focus, is to build up the chemical side of the
Hmm.
business. The Ford Transit can easily be switched over. Like right now,
Yes.
we speak, I have a spray rig in the back of it.
Okay, very cool.
Because we've been doing all the pre-emergence and stuff, getting ready for springtime here.
Hmm.
So that's what I'm really pushing right now. Take it one day at a time or one season at a time, and I set small goals for myself. And this year, I want so many chemical customers. And
Okay.
then once I get so many chemical customers, I will drop off some of the lawn maintenance
Okay.
customers, and we'll slowly switch it over to 100% chemical.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, the transit van would be perfect with that, especially with that side sliding door. Like you pull it, I probably don't even
Exactly.
have to go out the back or worry about, because that's the other thing too. Sometimes if you do find parking on the street and stuff, like I've had times where with my truck and trailer, I like find a spot and unload my mower, and I'll leave the ramps down with cones, and
Hmm.
somebody will still come and park right up behind it, and it's like,
Oh man,
did you
yeah. So
not see the ramps? Like, what did you expect was coming off and on there? Like, what do you, right? And then it's like I gotta like actually move the truck into the streets to actually load the thing. It's like, are you kidding me? But with that transit van, like that side sliding door for chemicals, that would be awesome. You just pull up, you don't have to worry about people parking behind you and stuff. You
right.
can just do the hose and everything right away.
And yeah, they're so great. Obviously, there's going to be pros and cons to everything, and we've already kind of went over that. But
Yeah,
all in all, man, I've just been thoroughly impressed with them. I think it's made me more profitable. It's made me more productive and more efficient. It works for what I do,
yeah,
and that's the thing. I love it. I want to actually, I'd like to have an all-wheel drive one, or
yeah.
the new one. They have made some minor changes. Mine didn't have the rear backup camera.
Okay.
Now that's like standard on all vehicles. So
Hmm.
if I was to update it and get a newer model, it would have that. I think they've changed some of the console and whatever else, but overall, man, they're just very versatile, and you can adapt them to whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
the other thing I
chemical,
was The other thing I was impressed, going back to the van here, went to go look at some, and just the amount of storage, like above you had like these cubby holes above
yeah,
you. There's in the door. There's just like all this, like these pockets and things everywhere, under the seats, like little drawers were like opening and things. I was like, wow, there's
yeah.
like so much storage in here, for
Yeah,
stuff.
and what I want to do is, and I'll probably put it on my YouTube channel if I get around to doing it. But in between the driver and the passenger seat up front, I want to, since we're doing more chemicals now, we leave a printout on the door,
Okay.
because to let them know what was applied, and whatever. I want to build me like a little, basically like a little desk or an office, so
Hmm.
that I can set up like an iPad or a laptop with like a mobile printing station, and be able to have like a little office up there.
Yeah, that would be very,
So,
very cool.
uh,
I actually did one of my past businesses that I did years ago was installing security window bars
yeah,
in people's homes, and I had a brand new Chevy Astrovan cargo van. Um,
gotcha. Yeah,
that I had for that, and I had built a whole little office inside the back of it on one side, kind of like it was inspired by like a Volkswagen Westfalia camper van, like the cabinets on one side, and
yes,
I had a old school dot matrix printer
yeah.
bolted to the top with an inverter and stuff. And I would take my laptops and do like
Oh,
the estimate and quote and print it out right there. And customers, because this was like 20 years ago or so, right? Customers were
yeah.
like so impressed that I was like
Oh,
giving them a printed copy of their invoice and stuff right out of the van, right? They're like, whoa, that's so cool. Like you're
and I'm
printing.
telling you, I don't know how you are, but for me, if I can get that estimate or quote to them right then and there,
Yeah.
that's one less thing I have to think about doing when I get home. And two, I think it makes your closing, like, closing of the job percentage higher,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you give it to them right then and there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'll do that. I do them now with email, but I'll
Yeah,
do it right there. Like after I've talked to the customer, I've got a template and stuff that I set up, and then I just change the prices and stuff on that template, and it's got all my policies and stuff because I want to have that written copy. And with email now, I like having it because you can search your email. So
right.
you can search it and look it up if you need to refer to it without having to go through a bunch of paperwork. So I like it that way, but it's still the same thing. Like I will literally do it right there before I drive off. I'll sit in the truck and email them a copy of the invoice as well, or the quote, even if I give them a handwritten version or something, or tell them I will not leave the property until I send it to them. So it's one less thing to worry about. It's done, and go from there. So share with us a time. This is the question that people probably have the most sort of pause for thought with. So share with us a time where you struggled in your business and maybe what you learned or did to overcome it.
I could easily answer that. It's been a struggle. It hasn't been an easy road. I think that anything that's worth doing is going to have some struggle. It's hard,
Yeah.
But I think an eye opener to me was when the Isuzu cab over, when it broke down and I couldn't find parts for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because at that time, like, I had some employees and we had quite a few properties, and I didn't come from like a business background or
Mhm.
any type of, we were just middle class hard workers. And I was kind of learning as I went, right? So when the truck broke down and I couldn't get parts, because that was always kind of my savior, was like my dad could bail me out. He could always fix whatever broke.
Okay.
And in this scenario, we couldn't get the parts to fix the truck. And it scared me because I mean, these people are wondering where you're at.
Hmm.
And, in the middle of the summer, this grass, I mean, they got fertilizer on it and they got water on it. It's growing so fast. And day by day, these yards are getting out of control. I
Okay.
have employees over here that can't work because our truck is broke down.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't think you could even rent a box truck, or at the time, that had like the landscape, dovetail in the back, right?
Yeah.
So it scared me. And that was a time I really struggled about, well, we got to have a better way of doing this.
Yeah.
And that kind of got me started with the whole transit idea and kind of scaling it down,
Okay.
because you can go rent a Ford Transit from Home Depot.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
if my van could blow up today and I can go to Enterprise or Home Depot and rent a van, and it's not even a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And
you got all these huge mowers and all this. What am I going to do when it tears up? Go buy a new one? Like,
yeah.
or wait for it to get fixed in the shop.
Yeah.
And that was an uneasy feeling to me at that time.
Yeah, that's a very good point, especially with those just generic sort of ramps that you're using. That you can go to that
Yeah,
rental van. There's no worrying about that, and you
that's
just put those ramps up, and away you go. You're back in business. And the
back
fact
to
that you
business.
don't really have any signage and stuff on your truck, really,
Right.
for most customers, they're going to be unaware that anything's different or wrong, or
I think I got
anything.
a brand new one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
it's man, it's streamlined it.
yeah.
It works out great for
Yeah,
this.
that's awesome. So down to the last two questions for you. Um, the next one is one of my most favorite questions that I ask people, and that is, um, share your best piece of advice with someone just starting out in the business. And I want you to come at this from the point of view that this is somebody that you know and you like, and that you only want the best for, not some random person coming up off the street or something and asking you, but this is somebody, maybe a family friend or something like that, and they come and they say, hey Justin, I'm thinking about starting a lawn care business, what can you tell me?
Oh man. I have a lot of answers to that question, but one of the best things I think I would tell someone like that would be, always follow through with what you tell a customer you're going to do.
Okay.
If you say you're going to be there at 5 o'clock, be there at 4:45. If you say that you're going to have their lawn cut by Friday, make sure it's cut by Friday. There's no quicker way to burn a bridge in a business relationship than for the customer to see that you're not there and you didn't do what you said you were going to do.
Okay. Great advice.
After that, I would say, know your numbers. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter what anybody charges per acre. You have to know what it costs your company, your setup, to be profitable.
Yeah.
Okay. If I can give you prices all day long that work for me and make me money, but you may kill yourself and working too hard and not even make a dollar with my prices.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
know some business, man. Take some business courses. Read online is such a good resource. You could get a whole like business degree online nowadays,
Hmm.
just from watching YouTube videos and learning from people. So definitely do what you're going to say you're going to do, and know your numbers and know how to run a business. Because I think a lot of businesses fail not because of lack of work quality, but because they just don't know how to run a business.
Yes. Yep.
And
Very,
that's
very.
something I struggled with because I didn't grow up from a business. My family didn't own some huge enterprise, and I just knew how to run a business. I know I learned by making mistakes and reading and asking questions. I was always the one, I wanted to go to someone I saw as more successful, and I wanted their ideas and knowledge to rub off on me. You
Okay.
know, like teach me, like tell me, how did you get where you're at? Versus a lot of people may be jealous of someone that has nicer items or nicer clothes or whatever. I was always the one that was like, hey, I want to know what you did, what worked for you. Maybe I can gain some knowledge and it will rub off on me, you know?
Yep, absolutely. That's great advice. Absolutely solid advice there. Everything that you touched on, knowing your numbers, so important. Absolutely fantastic. So, my last question for you is how can people follow you online?
Okay, well, we have a Facebook and Instagram, the Southern Reel Mower. You can type that in on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. And yeah, so try out the Southern Reel Mower. I mean, Straight Line Landscapes does have a local website, you know, and that's pretty much it. My email, you can do Justin at straightlinelandscapes.com. We do have the Georgia Reel Mower at gmail.com.
Okay.
I could be wrong on that one, but basically, if you go to Instagram or YouTube, my correct contact info will be there. If anyone has any questions or want to, you know, talk to me, I'll be glad to answer what I can. And then just, you know, if you want to watch the YouTube videos, it's Southern Real Mower.
Yeah, awesome. So, thank you for taking the time out to come onto the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun, and I'll come back anytime you want.
Awesome.